Abandoned buildings are more than empty shells. They're the bones of stories people tried to forget, places where happiness twisted into tragedy, where mistakes, cruelty, or simple bad luck turned everyday locations into real-life horror settings. In this video, we'll explore 3 disturbing abandoned places from around the world. A cursed amusement park, a psychiatric hospital of neglect and abuse, and a ghost town frozen at the moment it died. Each of them is real. Each has a backstory darker than any movie script. Point 1. The amusement park that turned into a graveyard of memories at first glance. An abandoned amusement park looks almost charming, overgrown carousels, rusting roller coasters, and faded signs from another time. But behind the broken lights of this park lies a long history of accidents, rumors, and whispered ghost stories. The park opened in the early 1900s as a dream project. A lakeside escape with rides, food stalls, and music. Families would flock there on weekends, children dragging parents from one attraction to the next. Wooden coasters rattled over tracks, the Ferris wheel towered above the trees, and boats drifted on the nearby lake. Photos from the era show crowds of smiling visitors, no hint of the darkness to come. Over the decades, however, the park quietly collected tragedies. A child thrown from a malfunctioning ride. A worker caught in moving machinery during a late-night repair. A small boat capsizing on the lake, where safety measures were loose and lifeguards weren't always watching. None of these incidents shut the park down, but each one added to a growing unease. Locals started to say the land itself was cursed, that long before the park, something terrible had happened there. An accident, a burial ground, or an unsolved crime. Whether those stories were true or not, strange reports kept coming. Staff members claimed to see a little girl wandering near a ride where a child had once died, only for her to vanish when approached. Security guards swore they heard ride chains clanking and carousel music in the middle of the night, even when the power was off. Financial trouble and new safety regulations finally pushed the owners to close the gates for good. They left in a hurry. Rides were never dismantled. Stalls still held decaying decorations. Nature moved in, trees splitting through concrete, moss covering ticket booths, weeds wrapping around coaster tracks. Urban explorers who visit today describe the park as eerily frozen between fun and fear. Sunlight shines through broken boards onto sagging roller coaster cars. Stuffed toys rot slowly in prize booths. Some explorers say that as the sun sets, they hear faint laughter, calliope music, or the squeak of a Ferris wheel that hasn't turned in decades. Maybe it's just the wind and imagination. Or maybe the park still remembers the crowds, the joy, and the screams. Point 2. The psychiatric hospital where patients were forgotten. Psychiatric hospitals are supposed to be safe places for healing. But in the 19th and 20th centuries, many became dumping grounds for society's unwanted. The mentally ill, the poor, the disabled, and anyone who didn't fit in. One such hospital, now abandoned, tells a story of extreme overcrowding, neglect, and cruelty. When it first opened, the institution was promoted as modern and humane. There were wide halls, gardens, and high ceilings to let in light. Early brochures showed calm patients strolling outdoors and doctors using the latest therapies. But within a few decades, reality collapsed under numbers. The hospital was built for a few hundred people. It eventually held several thousand. Beds filled every ward, then every hallway. Some patients slept on mattresses on the floor, or on bare boards when even that ran out. With too few staff and too little funding, care became mechanical and often brutal. Heavy sedatives replaced conversation. Restraints, leather straps, metal cuffs, isolation rooms, became tools not just of safety, but of convenience. Former employees later described wards that smelled permanently of sweat and disinfectant, where screams at night were normal background noise. Investigative reports and later lawsuits uncovered stories of physical abuse, forced treatments, and even experimental procedures administered without proper consent. Electroshock therapy was used widely. Patients were sometimes punished for minor rule-breaking by being left alone for hours or days. Many died of disease, malnutrition, violence, or simply being unattended when they needed help. Few families ever got full explanations. Public outrage peaked when journalists gained access and published photos. Endless rows of beds, patients staring blankly at the camera, filthy corridors, and staff who looked more like guards than caregivers. Governments promised reforms, but eventually the easiest solution became closure. Patients were moved elsewhere, or simply discharged into a world that wasn't ready to support them. When the hospital shut down, it was like someone pressed pause. Medical files, wheelchairs, personal belongings, even some medical equipment were left behind. Today, explorers walk through peeling hallways where old charts still hang on doors. In some rooms, children's drawings remain taped to the walls. In others, rusted beds and decayed restraints sit as if waiting for someone to return. Many call the hospital haunted. Stories circulate of apparitions in white gowns, footsteps echoing on empty floors, or sudden cold spots in otherwise warm rooms. Even without ghosts, the atmosphere is heavy. Every flaking coat of paint, every broken window, every abandoned toy belongs to someone who once lived there. The true horror is not a monster lurking in the dark, but the realization of how easily people can be locked away, silenced, and forgotten. Point 3. The ghost town that died overnight. Our final story takes us to a ghost town, an entire community left behind like a movie set after the actors walked off stage. These towns exist all over the world. In deserts, forests, and frozen landscapes. Each one has its own reason for being abandoned, but the effect is the same. A place where human life ended so abruptly that everyday objects are still in their last positions. This particular town grew around a single industry. It might have been a mine, a chemical plant, or a large factory, something that promised stable jobs and government investment. Houses were built in neat rows. A school opened. A small clinic, a grocery store, a post office, and a cultural center completed the picture. For workers who moved there with their families, it felt like a fresh start in a harsh environment. But the town's life support system was fragile. When the mine began to fail, or when contamination was discovered in soil and water, everything changed. People grew sick, livestock died, or a catastrophic accident made the area unsafe. Authorities investigated and eventually declared the region unfit for long-term living. Residents were ordered, or pressured, to leave. Some packed whatever they could fit into trucks and buses and never came back. Others left in such a rush that they abandoned furniture, clothing, even family photos. Over time, the town's name was removed from official maps. It became a blank spot in the landscape. Today, walking through its streets feels like intruding on a paused moment. In classrooms, lessons are still faintly visible on chalkboards. In one house, plates remain on a dining table, covered in dust. In another, a child's room holds a bed with faded sheets and toys scattered across the floor. Doors creak in the wind, paint peels from walls, and grass pushes up through cracked pavement. Occasionally, journalists or explorers visit, filming the decaying buildings and telling the story of how the town died. Some report strange feelings of being watched, or hearing faint sounds, footsteps, distant voices, that logically must be the wind, animals, or their own nerves. But emotionally, the town feels alive with absence, as if thousands of ordinary days are still echoing through empty houses. Ghost towns like this are more than spooky backdrops. They are warnings. They show what happens when a community depends entirely on one risky industry, or when environmental damage and human error pile up until a place simply can't be lived in anymore. In horror movies, a ghost town is a stage for monsters. In real life, the villain is often greed, negligence, or indifference. Closing thoughts. These three abandoned places, an amusement park of accidents, a hospital of suffering, and a town that died, are very different, but they share something in common. None of them were built to be scary. They were supposed to bring joy, healing, or prosperity. Horror crept in later, through small decisions, ignored warnings, or pure bad luck. That may be why we're so fascinated by them. When we look at a rusting ride, a dark hospital corridor, or a silent main street, we aren't just seeing ruins. We're seeing how fragile normal life really is, and how quickly any place can become a nightmare once people walk away.